Yeehaw, finally we're off. Had a bit of trouble going live. Had to reboot. Okay, here we go. This should be good.
A digital speakeasy of free thinkers and strange followers of the esoterica. How are you doing, Nick?
Man, I'm feeling crispy, man. I got sunburned yesterday pretty bad. You can probably
Same.
tell.
Yeah, we are lobster-fied.
It's been a beautiful weekend, guys.
Yeah.
Anyone else out there with the
Hey Diane, good to
anyone else
see ya.
basking in the warm glow of Apollo?
Had trouble. I had to reboot.
So good to see everybody, man. We got what a great group in the chat.
Yeah.
I'm gonna start at the bottom and go up. We got Vast Thinker, Tricky Subject. Hey, Josh Monday, what's up, man?
Monday, what's up,
Good
buddy?
to see you. Let me scroll up a little more here. Chris Caps, of course.
Yep, American Cars. What's up,
American
amigo?
Cars. Just Me, welcome.
Yeah.
Jesse's a boater. Hey, welcome.
Jesse's a
Glad
boater.
you're watching. Very
What's up,
cool.
Jesse?
Very
Glad you could
cool.
be here.
Yeah, glad you're here. Thank you. We had a great interview a couple weeks ago with Jesse. Go back, I think 1, 2, 3 episodes back on the channel, and you guys can see that. Our man, Gabe Bello Music.
Gabe, what's up, amigo? The spice must flow.
He just
And it will flow
I
tonight.
mean,
is the legend Gabe Bello. He just released a new single called
Yes.
Jesus Deserves More Than 4 Chords. Go to Gabe Bello Music on YouTube. Go to his channel and check that out. It's
Yes.
awesome. Let's see. I think I got it. I just want to make sure I'm not missing anyone here. Nope, I think we're good.
Scroll it all the way to the very top.
I'm done scrolling. We're not going to keep anybody waiting anymore. Let us begin with our toast.
Yes.
Let's do our toast. Grab your drinking vessels, and I'll lead this time.
Okay.
Take up the broken sword of your father.
And strike down the darkness.
Cheers.
Amen.
Yes. Before we get to our interview with Ron Moorhead, and before he strikes down the darkness, real quick, if you wouldn't mind, if you haven't yet subscribed, that would really help. Take up the broken sword with your finger and strike down the subscribe button. And if you've already done that, hit the like button, share the video. We'd appreciate those things as well. That would help tremendously. I will start by, we got to mention our sponsors. Special thanks to
hey Tricky, good to
Joel
see you,
Cherico
mate.
at ChericoPottery.com. This is the Kothon Spartan mug. He handcrafts and hand paints each and every one of these. They're beautiful, they're durable, and they are beautiful replicas of what the Spartans themselves drank out of. They are called the Kothon Spartan mugs. Go to ChericoPottery.com and check them out.
Yeah. And when you are drinking like a Spartan, if you would also like to have a Leonidian beard, then you can go to JardaniJovanovic.com. Jardani Jovanovic hair and skincare products.
I don't know what's
made by
going
real
on with
men
this.
for real men. Or as I like to say, awaken your inner John Wick.
Yes, I do.
Give 007 a run for his money. Take it away, Nick.
Gentlemen, give your better half reason to doubt that.
With Jardani Jovanovic hair and skincare products. JardaniJovanovic.com. Mike Fisher is the owner and proprietor of Jardani Jovanovic, and he is often in the chat. He is a dear friend of the channel and a big supporter of ours, and we are eternally grateful to him. And his products are great. They actually make me shower more because I like.
Thank you for your ministry, Mike.
Yes, yeah. That's Mike's ministry. Is hygiene.
Kara OC is in the chat as well.
Hey,
I want
Kara.
to say hi to Kara. Glad you're here tonight. We're going to be in the chat with you guys. We're going to play the episode of the interview with Ron Moorhead here.
Yeah.
And do you want to give a little introduction about Ron Moorhead?
Yeah.
For those who don't know.
And Brad Whitaker, I think, was also in the, or no, Whitelock. There he is. Brad Whitelock.
Awesome.
I think you're new. I don't think we've
Brad
seen
Whitelock.
you.
Hi, yeah, welcome. Glad you're here.
Glad you're here, buddy. So, yes, introduction. Ron Moorhead is the proprietor, the owner, the discoverer is maybe the best way to describe it, of the Sierra Sound. Gosslings.
Yeah.
So the Sierra Sounds, for anyone who may not be initiated into Bigfoot lore and Bigfoot culture, the Sierra Sounds are arguably the at least second best piece of Bigfoot evidence in existence.
There's the Patty Gimlin film.
Yep.
I caught the end of this, guys, and at the end, Nick plays Bigfoots talking to each other. They actually got a language.
Yeah, the Patterson Gimlin film, and then right underneath that, Sierra Sounds, and they are creepy. They are.
They are.
They're very, very disturbing in a way that because they cannot be replicated by human vocal cords. I mean, you can come close, and in the Sierra Sounds, in the recordings, you hear Ron Moorhead, talk about like how they tried to speak back to them, but you can very clearly tell what's a human and what's not a human, whatever that thing is.
Yep.
So, and they were recorded in the early 70s.
Yep.
And Ron is he's a entrepreneurial type. He sort of makes his own money. He certainly did not intend for this to be sort of his defining life's work in a way, but it kind of wound up that way.
Yeah.
And interesting guy. We certainly had different ideologies from Ron. Ron's not a Christian. He's kind of more new agey now in the winter of his years than he was when he was younger. I think he was raised that way. But we kind of look at it like, we're using different terminology, but we're all scientists blindfolded, touching the elephant and describing what we're seeing. And there's still a lot of overlap on that Venn diagram.
Yeah.
And Ron is a gentleman. He is a great guy to talk
Yep.
to. He's a lot of fun. He is kind of like a really rustic gentleman cowboy. He's like the cool character in Red Dead Redemption that you come across.
Oh, they love Red Dead Redemption.
Yeah.
So Ron is cool. We really enjoyed our time with him, and it was really special to talk to him because he had a lot of interesting things to say about Bigfoot that I did not anticipate.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. He's kind of like if Sam Elliott were a Bigfoot researcher.
Yeah, dude, Ron has got the coolest voice.
Yeah.
I mean, he might dethrone Derek as far as it's close, man.
As far as radio voice?
As far as radio voice,
So
Derek,
deep.
yeah. Derek has that commanding radio presence, with his voice, but Ron has got just that.
Ron Moorhead's voice has been out in the wilderness for like 40, 50 years.
Yeah.
You know? He sounds like that.
He
He's
just
cool.
sounds like the guy who fought a bear at some point. That's awesome.
He does.
So,
He does.
but he's a sweet guy and very intelligent.
Yeah.
Incredibly intelligent. So, anyways. Yeah.
Well, let's get to it. I'll play it right now. We'll, of course, as normal, halfway through the interview, we'll come on, do an intermission, chat with you guys, and we'll be in the chat as the interview is playing as well.
Mm-hmm.
And without further ado, here is Ron Moorhead.
Enjoy.
Your YouTube feed is crap. Stop wasting your time watching bot-boosted shills and self-appointed gurus cloying for your attention. Instead, join the Gosslings interview live stream and podcast. The Gosslings, a dark-lit digital speakeasy of free thinkers. A super chat of radical truth-seeking wizards who eat trolls for second breakfast. Topics that'll make your mama's hair stand on end. Ideas that'll make your pastor's knees knock. Guests that will illuminate the hidden chambers of your mind. And interviews that strike down the darkness. Welcome to the Gosslings.
Yay!
So, Ron Moorhead, tell us a little bit about what the Sierra Sounds are and how they came to be. Tell us that story.
Yeah.
Well, I got involved in 1971 when the Johnson brothers had came out with a story about these monsters up there at this camp they've been hunting since 1958. And they told the other hunters that these, which they were all friends of mine, but I wasn't a hunter at the time. And I went back and they started experiencing some kind of monster. They weren't sure what it was coming around the camp that they had there. 8 miles in the wilderness, 8,400 feet in elevation, very inaccessible, really imposing trip to get in there. And one of the guys got freaked out. He was very religious. He thought, no, monsters like that can't exist nowadays. We'd know about them, right? A lot of people think that. They, well, if they were around, we'd found one by now. Well, they're not like a bear. It's just going to fall off and die. I mean, there's something else going on with them.
Mm-hmm.
But he ran off next morning. He left them a note that I'm out of here because these things came around the night, and he just, the sounds they were making were really freaky and scared him off. Well, he came out and told the wives what the Johnson brothers said is true. There's something up there, and it's really freaking. And so they said, well, the guys didn't come out. They were supposed to come out next day. They didn't come out. And they said, well, you got to go find out what's going on with them. I'm not going up there by myself. So he asked me to go with him. And at 29 years old, that's what I was then. You can't be hurt, you know. You just didn't do it. Right. So I chopped up there with him. About killed me getting in there. I thought I was in shape, but I wasn't. And anyway, we got in, and the guys were okay. So that got me involved with the group. And that's how it began. We also started going back and taking tape recorders and cassette tape recorders. That's all we had then. So we started recording their vocalizations, their sounds. And the winter of 1971-72, when we got snowed out, we couldn't go back anymore. Warren Johnson, who's the leader of our group, he's passed away now. And, he wrote a letter to Ivan Sanderson. Ivan Sanderson, thinking it was a hoax, sent it off to Peter Byrne, who's on the West Coast in Oregon. Peter, thinking the same thing, wrote a letter to Al Berry, who lived in California, Northern California. He said, if you want to go talk to these guys, go ahead, and maybe something to it, but we think it's a hoax. And there was a 23-page handwritten letter by Warren Johnson into Ivan Sanderson. I didn't know all this till later on, you know, when I got to read the background of it all. So Al came down, interviewed us all, and he still had his guard up. He wasn't sure. His master's degree in science. He was a news reporter, then working for a newspaper. And we invited him in to go in 1972. So he went in, took his tape recorder, cassette, and he ran into the same thing. When these things started coming around, and he started looking all over, like who's messing around with these guys, you know, because it's really a hard trip to get in there. You just walk in there and start, you know, playing around.
Yeah.
You know, especially with these guys all got high-powered guns. You know, what are you doing? Anyway, he looked all over. Found out later he was going through our packs when we was out walking around, that he was just trying everything he could to see if he could be pulling this off without even a sign other than that. And he finally, he passed away 10 years ago now. Wow, time flies. Him and I became friends, and we started talking about this. That's where we toured around and doing this stuff. I had my own airplane then, so I figured out we'd just go places. And we was invited and talked about it, and it was fun. We didn't talk about the strange stuff. He said, don't do that, because like I say, I had master's degree in classical science, which is a parameters. It's got its disciplines. You can't go outside those disciplines or you get laughed out of the community. You know?
Right.
You know, if you're a scientist, you're going to lose your tenure. You know, just people suffer if they get in that, because the government will make that happen one way or the other. The leader,
yeah.
And the first thing you know, they won't get some funding for the next project or something. And Grover Krantz had that problem. You know, he got an issue. I think I write about that in my second book, Quantum Bigfoot. And he lived in the same town I did in Washington. I moved to Washington from California in 2008, I think it was, 2009 maybe. And so I became a resident up there and got into the Olympics with the Olympic project. A lot of fun, a lot of Bigfoot stuff going on up there too. But like I mentioned earlier, we moved out of Washington into North Carolina, so that's where I reside now.
So the interesting thing about this, it seems like you got connected with these guys, and you would hike up to this remote location where it's not like you guys were just hanging out and then this stuff started happening around you, and then you're like, oh, let's get out our tape recorders and record it. It was, if I'm tracking, it was happening pretty frequently, and you guys decided to steer into it and bring your tape recorders with you. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was. It didn't happen every time, but most of the time it did. When folks were up there, we couldn't all go in at the same time. I was fortunate enough to have a pretty good organized business where I could get away, and So when a lot of times we'd ride in, I had animals and horses, mules, pack mules, and so did Bill, my friend, and we'd go in together and take supplies in, and we took a stove in, we took barrels in, we did a lot of that stuff, and reassembled the stove after we got there, and used the barrels to pack supplies in, pack our sleeping bags in, so when we did go out, if we walked back in, we'd have something there.
Right.
Pieces of foam laying on the ground was important.
Yeah, it is. Yeah. Can't take anything.
When you went back, did you ever find any of those things disturbed or moved or anything?
Not by what we thought was Bigfoot, but bear. We had really, we had ring barrels and bears get into those. So we started wiring those together. I got some pictures of that. But one night we thought they were being torn apart. We was all inside the shelter, and the shelter is just a makeshift bunch of deadfall leaning up against the trees that grew in a circle. Anyway, we thought everything was being tossed around out there. Well, it's Bigfoot, I guess, because they'd been making their sounds before. Looked out there when all the commotion stopped and nothing had been disturbed. And, that was one of the little puzzles we had to put up on the shelf, because you can't answer that one right with classical science. It doesn't make sense. Unless they were hypnotizing us all, all of us were imagining it, or could we have been hearing into another dimension, or other things like that happened up there, but you can't. It's like trying to nail Jello to the wall. You just can't do it.
Right. Were you guys the only ones to experience this kind of stuff, or were there other people who would go and camp there when you guys weren't there? And was there a community of people who sort of shared these experiences?
Good question, but no, there wasn't.
Really? Wow.
It was placed so far back in. If you shot a deer back there, you had to get it out.
I know that feeling. Yep.
That's why we took the mules in and the pack horses for deer season.
You mentioned the horses, and I've heard people say that may have been the missing ingredient that allowed the Patterson-Gimlin footage to take place, because maybe it interfered with Sasquatch's ability to smell the humans. You take a more esoteric kind of approach to Bigfoot than I think what a lot of these more materialist people take with, it's just an animal, whatever. Do you think the horses had any sort of hand in your ability to repeatedly come back, or were they more of a non-factor as far as Bigfoot's interaction with you?
I think they were non-factor, because a lot of times we walk in and it was stuff that happened too. And that's another thing, that would just be frozen when these things were making the sounds. They wouldn't tromp around like when a bear would come around.
Really?
And then the Patterson family, they were walking up the creek, Bluff Creek, with their horses. I'm sure the sound of that, plus the breeze that was coming towards them, would block out a lot of things that they could recognize them.
So the horses reacted too.
Our horses?
Yeah.
No, they didn't.
No, they didn't react to Bigfoot.
No, only when a bear was around.
Oh, gotcha. Okay.
And no, they certainly would when a bear tromp all over the place. And that's what happened. Like you said before, we had a bear come in, and horses really acted up.
Yeah, I bet that. I would too.
Had to shoot the bear. Oh wait, that was 76. Excuse me.
Yeah.
When you were recording these sounds, did the sounds typically happen in the evening or at night or during the day, or could it be any time that you would encounter these?
Pretty much the evening, just at dusk. You know it by hearing a whoop sound or a pounding sound or something like that. And that's when we thought, well, we better go inside, because you still don't know what they're all about. We don't know. We wouldn't know what I was dealing with at the time. We underestimated them. I was thinking they were kind of a wild something out there that hadn't been discovered by science yet. And they are, I guess, but there's more to them than that. And I've come to that conclusion for sure. There's more to the ones that we were dealing with. Again, they're not all the same. In my opinion. I think the Patterson patty at Bluff Creek was more human-like. The trackways are more human-like. It's I think it may have been a remnant of crossbreeding between indigenous people from eons ago, and it's just something like that. A lot of them are like that. In fact, there's a lot of stories from native lore that says they took their women, and so I think there's a lot to be looked into there. What we had up there was a want to say pure, but pure alien or pure something. But they could talk with a sapient speech. And
Right.
that's what the cryptolinguist found, and that's what Dr. Curran showed in his graphs in the paper they wrote, showing it represented an animal over 8 foot tall. This little clip that he looked into like that compared to a human global track length. And he writes about that in a book called Anthropology of the Unknown. No, Man-Like Monsters on Trial. That's the name of the book.
That's a good title.
Yeah. And so that was he presented that in 1978, I think it was, at the British Columbia University of British Columbia, and it was very well attended. One of the first ones ever made. He gave his report up there on the sounds, but academics just couldn't get a head around it. He's highly profiled, and this guy is very well credited to be able to do what he did. But what he did, he's an electrical engineer who high level clearance, by the way, with the military and all. And he said whatever they are, they have a voice range that exceeds what a human can do.
Wow.
Yeah.
The little graph that he showed that shows where a little bit that he showed on the graph, he showed a couple of where the range was outside the average human range, way outside, and then you go inside the human range and below the human range, which means they can mimic just about anything.
Mm-hmm.
That's, I think, true. And then when the cryptolinguist got a hold of it in 2008, he heard it by accident, and he was trained by the military as a cryptolinguist, which means he's spent his career in the Navy listening to sounds and see if it was a code or if it was a language, and if it was a language, was there any deception in the language? That's what he did, and there's only a handful of the guys that have the credibility that he has. I think a lot of people underestimate what that means, but he says they have a language by the human definition of language, which means a morphine stream of words, sapient words, like we're talking now.
Yeah.
Dolphins don't do that. Nothing does that except humans, according to Dr. Philip Lieberman, Brown University. And he had another professor at Washington University who declined thinking he was a student, but was just trying to pull his leg. He was just trying to get some professional help to clean up, say, is this real or is it not real? I just want to know. Give me an unbiased opinion. Do a study on it.
Yeah.
And that's all he was after, and he got it. And from Dr. Curran, University of Wyoming.
I remember, I think the first time I found out about the Sierra Sounds was in 2012, maybe 2014. It was when Joe Rogan had his show. Joe Rogan Questions Everything, I think maybe was the name of it. It was short-lived, 1 or 2 seasons long, but they did a Bigfoot episode that showed the Sierra Sounds, and he kind of poo-pooed it. He was like, no, it sounds like, I could do the sounds right now, and I remember, them kind of doing this surface level, mockery of it. And I just remember watching that saying, yeah, that doesn't sound like what I'm hearing. That does not sound like.
Well, yeah, I've challenged him.
Really?
Yeah. I said, no, you can't. First of all, you can't. We got sounds of them stepping on each other, male and female talking over each other. And the cryptolinguist says no human can do that. And we've had other studies saying, there's people way outside the language barriers that we have. And Joe Rogan, he just needs to do his homework. He's not a dumb guy. He's a smart guy.
Right. He's
got a big following. For him to poo-poo something like that without understanding what really goes on in science that we've got behind it and all that stuff just makes him bad, I think, for anyone who looks into it.
It did. The funny thing is, and I don't know if this was like some weird, like 5D chess move on Joe's part or not, but like the Sierra Sounds ended up coming out looking better to any person with a triple-digit IQ than they did going into it, because they kind of poo-pooed it in a dumb way to where everybody I talked to is like, yeah, dude, I don't know. I think there's something to that. That's weird,
Yeah.
Well, I publicly challenge him every time I get on a program like this. I mean, I don't like to talk bad about anybody, but he just needs to do a little bit more research before he starts mouthing off like that.
He needs to have you on. That's what he needs to do.
I was scheduled to be on with him once, but
oh, really?
That's when everything was inside his bullshit meter. Is that what they call it?
Yeah.
But I was supposed to meet up with him somewhere where he was traveling, and I was going the same direction. I was going to be there at a certain time, and he said, "Well, we'll interview you then." But it didn't happen. I mean, he was scheduled to interview another person, and that person started really getting pissed at him because the person actually had a sighting, and he didn't want any of it edited out, and Joe Rogan wouldn't do that. He's not going to know. So anyway, that kind of stopped them. So they shot ahead of me or behind me. I'm not sure which one. So I just did what I was supposed to do there and kept going. I didn't care really. I didn't care for his program at the time.
Yeah, and you know what?
Yeah.
I admire you not being.
Hey, Hank, good to see ya.
That's what I like about Ron. Ron's like, "Oh, you got a show? Big deal. I got a thing I got to do." Like, yeah, good for you, man.
Well, now if he asked me on there, I would accept the challenge, but he won't do that because if he goes on now, he's got to do his homework, and he can't debunk these things. And
Yeah,
he can't mimic them. I mean, we had another sound expert. She was only one of 10 in the whole state of California certified as a court reporter or no, court interpreter in 10 different languages.
Whoa.
Yeah. I mean, she's excellent. She listened to the sounds, and she said, nobody can do this. I challenge anybody to try to do this. And she can make any kind of sound you want just about, but she can't go out of the human range.
Right.
And that's the problem. These things go out of the human range.
You know, I think I heard you say something in another interview where possibly they have two sets of vocal cords. Is that?
Well, we have 2 vocal cords, but they may have as many as 7. I've been told that. I've been told that. We don't know. But something gives them they're really out of sight, out of whatever you call it.
Yeah.
It's just way over what we can do. Very, very unique vocal mechanism. And I think who was it? Thinker Thumper, which I don't know him personally, but he did a series on the sounds.
You know, that's one of my favorite YouTube channels.
And he said that no human can do that. It can do 5 octaves in one tone.
Yeah.
And no human can do that. Only human can only get to maybe 3.
I was going to ask you about that. In fact, I had it written down here somewhere. Are there, and you may have answered it, I guess, with Thinker Thunker, but are there any good YouTube channels for vetting Sasquatch footage?
You mean the film footage?
Yeah, or just any evidence in
All the
general.
blurry stuff that you.
All the blurry creature stuff. You know.
Well, I know a guy in the Olympic range there who helps sounds, but he doesn't know about. There's a lot of guys out there that can do the film stuff and debunk it or not debunk it. But so much of it is blurry, and you wonder. You know, people aren't walking around in the woods. Usually, they're trying to enjoy themselves. They don't walk around carrying a camera open all the time. And when you do see these things, believe me, they can move fast. I saw one just once, 1974, when we recorded them. It moved. We were outside, and that's the first time they ever started interacting with me and my friend Bill. We packed supplies and we were there, and they started interacting with us while we were outside, and that's when I got my tape recorder out of my saddlebag and started recording them. And that's where I come up with my second CD. I narrate that, tell the story, and integrate the sounds with it. But I was calling back to them, trying to mimic them, and that got a reaction. But they were trying to say something, trying to communicate with us. And to this day, I heard that one.
I think I heard that one. There was someone with you, and you were like calling back to them or trying to mimic them, and they would keep, keep calling out. Your friend said in that,
Good to see you.
That I heard that he said there's a couple of them over there by those rocks. Was he able to actually see them?
He saw them once. Wow. I saw them once that night. Yeah, that was me that said that. I think because you could hear them over by the rocks.
Okay.
And he wasn't saying much of anything that day. Should we go in now? And I said, no, I don't want to go in. They're so friendly at that time. You think, if they're going to kill us or eat us, they'd have done it by now. We've already.
Hey, B, where are the Carnatic Islands? I don't know where they are.
I'm dealing with it since 71. And so I was excited that night, and I started trying. But they were really trying to, according to the cryptolinguists, they were slowing the.
Okay, New Zealand. Fair enough.
They may have been able to understand.
Really?
And because the chatter was a lot different than it was from 71, 72.
Interesting.
And he said same vocal people, same thing did it, but what they were doing was slowing their chatter down.
Wow.
And that's just something we might be able to understand. And I wasn't even trying to understand them so much. I just mimicking them, thinking we still deal with some kind of big gorilla out there or something. You don't know, but you know they're talking to each other. But then I didn't know this much about language then. I had it, my friend had it, but nobody else had it that I. but I didn't realize how unique it was to just humans. They got it, and that they're not identified by science.
So some of these, so the ones you encountered out there did have a benevolent nature to them.
I assume so because we didn't get ate or carried away.
Right. Yeah, you didn't
That was
get
nice
ripped
of them.
apart.
It
Yeah.
was benevolent of them.
Yeah.
Like Portlock, I was up in Portlock here a couple years ago with the Discovery Channel.
Mm-hmm. I saw that.
Alaska Killer Bigfoot. I think I was on 2 episodes of that. And yeah, those people had something going on up there years ago. And they still do have something up there.
Yeah.
They wanted me to go in as quote unquote the expert, which I don't know about experts, but
I can't think of anybody better, Ron.
well, they're paying my way, so you know. And I love Alaska. I've been up there before. I've flown a plane all around Alaska.
Oh, that's awesome.
It's a nice country.
Well, you've been all over the world.
Pretty much, yeah.
Exploring this, investigating this. Outside of North America, what other region or country would you say probably has the most reported activity of these things? That's a good question.
That's a good question. They see them in Nepal, the Yeti, and they see them in Mexico and South America. I went to South America a couple of different times down there while with Brian Forrester, and I was investigating these elongated skulls. And, seeing how they were naturally.
There's a biggie at 7.3. Wow.
Yeah.
And Incas were trying to, we think, mimic the pre-Inca people, which were the elongated skull people, which we think were hybrids. Totally human. Because after the DNA is really what we're trying to do down there. But they had about a 30% more brain matter in their skulls, and they had the elongation, which was like I said, a single parietal. We only have 2. We have one on each side, of our heads.
Yeah.
They have a single one, and there's no sagittal suture in the middle. Some that do, but then who knows? They're crossbreeding all the time, and things are crossbred for eons. And we tend to, I think, as humans, live in this 100-year bubble. Maybe go back a couple hundred years, think about Washington was here and stuff like that. But if you think about how long this Earth has been here, how long humanoids have been running around, a lot has happened. I mean, a lot has happened. I've seen remains of non-human entities down in South America. And I've been in Siberia too, and they took me to a huge cave back there that the shore people, SHOR, took us to in a very remote area, and took us into this huge cave which you could drive a truck into. And so this is where they call him the wild man back there, but this is where the wild man hangs out. I went in there and I saw a track. Dr. Mellon was with me, and so was John Frederick. And we all seen the tracks, but when someone takes you to a place, especially it's the media, it was a media event. I mean, there must have been 10 or 15 media people there from all over the world except the United States. And they were following around with cameras all the time. But when they take you to a spot like that, you don't know if it was set up or not.
Yeah, sure.
Oh, yeah.
You just don't know. So as much as you want to believe the people, because we did interview some people that have seen them and believe they're real, it's in Siberia. You want to believe it, but you can't say 100% that that's what you found because you were taken to it. And when I run across some myself, that's another story. I see it for myself, and I am the one that found the track in there, but that doesn't mean it wasn't set up either.
Sure.
However, I don't like to think that way about that whole situation, but you just can't say one way or the other as much as they wanted us to, because it was on the Moscow News a week or so later when we got out of there, and it was It was an adventure. Let's put it that. I love adventure. I love experiences, and again, that's what we're all here for: is experiences. How we respond to experiences is what's very important, I think.
Yeah.
And when you're trapped in some of these things and you think you're the victim, no, you're not a victim. You're just learning something.
Yep.
And where if you learn and start responding to all these negative things that you think is negative with compassion and love, you're going to raise your personal vibrational frequency. And we're all energy, frequency, and vibration. Now, can energy disappear? Can Bigfoot disappear? That's where this takes me to. Because is there science behind all those things we ran into up there? And yes, there is. Dr. Paul Dirac, 1933, won the Nobel Prize for antimatter. That's where matter can change into antimatter. And that's where matter and energy are interchangeable. That's important to remember. Matter and energy are interchangeable. Einstein had actually said that too. But Paul Dirac got the equation, won the Nobel Prize for it in 1933. Later established physically by CERN in 2012, I think it was, the Hadron Collider.
Yep.
So, you got these things. Can matter disappear? Yeah, but it goes out of our frequency. It's going to disappear. We only see certain frequencies. 430 to 770 terahertz. That's our light frequency. All these other frequencies are out there, but we don't see them.
Well, and Nick and I, as a couple of conservative Christians who delve pretty heavily in esoterica, that does lend in a good way, a materialist sort of legitimacy to the spiritual stuff that we always talk about.
Yeah.
I mean, we've had people on about demonic possessions and ghost huntings and the paranormal and from a Christian lens, but there is this, and I write books about angelic warfare, and Nick has written a book about paranormal, end of times kind of stuff, and there's no telling, what lies around you in a way that you just don't
can't see.
Or you would be amazed at what's around you right now, or me too. Just things you don't see.
Yeah, I want to have tea with my guardian angel.
Yeah, we all got one too. One's been on my wing.
You think so?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Something's kept me out of trouble. Well, mostly anyway. But it's who is it? Tesla said, "Well, one man calls God, no one calls paranormal, or no, excuse me, no one calls quantum science. Well, one man calls God, so quantum science and spirituality are synonymous."
Mm-hmm.
And even Einstein said, he said something about religion without science is lame. Science without religion is blind. So I think we have to put all that together. I think just the opposite of that, but it's what they're saying. And they said today that they studied the stuff all the way back to cuneiform, and it's interesting when you get into the history of all this stuff, how whoever's in charge of controlling the people at the time is the one that's going to control the narrative. That's through eons of time, all the way back in the Sumerians and up into the Jewish and the Hebrews, Greeks, all those people are going to control what the narrative is. Government today, for a long time we thought Roswell was a balloon, right?
Right.
Now they've shot themselves in the foot.
Yeah, they have. Yeah.
So aliens have been coming here. They're here now. It's out of our perspective. People said they shot off and just put in a bullet. Well, they were actually. Can anything go faster than light?
No, shouldn't. Not
that
without
we know of.
quantum phase shifting, I guess.
Well, our thoughts are going faster than light.
Oh, okay.
So
all right.
There's the energy body and there's the physical body. The energy body is not constricted by Newtonian physics. The laws of physics does not restrict the consciousness that we have. Everything is immediate, and that's been established now by science. Our physical body is controlled. Our brain controls our limbs and everything we got going on in our body. Yeah. But our ethereal body is it's the energy body, which is not bound by those rules, and it's in another world altogether. It's the God, it's the spirituality that we have within us. And I mentioned this when we were talking earlier. You clear up your pineal gland, which is the little gland inside your head,
Mm-hmm.
and let it be in coherence with your heart. It'll tell your heart what to do because that's where you receive things through your pineal gland. In my opinion, that's the third eye. Egyptians write about and all that. But you get that connected to the heart gives you a feeling. And that heart, if it's in coherence with your brain, that's what the chi is all about, balancing all that stuff.
Yeah, well, the Bible talks about it. The heart can be deceived, and it's because if your heart is out of alignment, if you're not in the flow of obeying God and doing what is good, then
Well, the problem comes when your head interprets it the wrong way.
And your instrument can be out of alignment.
Yeah, that's what balancing your rhythm.
Yeah.
That's what balancing is all about. So that's why we meditate. That's why we listen and try to just be calm.
Yeah, that's why we pray and try to keep ourselves, like, as Christians, we try to keep ourselves sort of grounded in the Word and subjecting our ego. That's a big one.
It's hard.
Ego is what keeps us down.
Yeah, Stephen Pressfield talks about that too. You and him, he's one of our favorite authors. We interviewed him, and he doesn't deal in the esoteric stuff, but you and him could have a long talk about ego and and
The obstacle of the ego.
the obstacle of it. Yeah.
Yeah, but it's what keeps us human. Just have to control it.
Yeah.
It
Has to
you're gonna have ego no matter what. You want to comb your hair before you go to church, right?
Right. Yeah.
Things like that. We don't want to not have some ego, but you just gotta not tell everybody how great you are. Because you comb your hair, right?
The bar is low for me, Ron. You don't understand.
Well, a lot of people are at different, obviously they're at different places with that. And some people give a lot of time to prayer or meditation and trying to balance out everything. And other people are just totally, they don't believe in any of that stuff.
Oh, yeah.
Do you think that those who are more balanced, are they more apt to have encounters?
Oh, yeah.
Is there a certain type of person who's more apt to have an encounter with one of these creatures?
I think it's the one who opens their mind up to, like a parachute, it's got to open to work. If they open their mind up to just being vanilla, let it come through into your pineal gland, you'll get the feeling in your heart. Heart will be in coherence, the brain, you'll do the right thing. But they can tune into your frequency. We all have a frequency.
Mm-hmm.
And that's how some of them can mind speak to some people. People ask me if they ever mind speak to you, and I said, not that I know of, because I'm too analytical. My brain was too analytical. It can be. It's really easy for us to do is to just go by our gut feeling about something.
Yeah.
They were speaking to me that night. I'm trying to tell me something because my brain wasn't picking it up. I made my ears work.
Yeah.
I still don't know what they're
Yeah.
saying. I still don't know what they're saying. The cryptolinguists can't tell you what they're saying. He can only tell you that there's a language by the human definition of language. He transcribed. I didn't embedded very well. He's a two-time graduate of the Navy's military. It's called Department of Defense now, but it's a language institute in Monterey, California. And his letter got back from him and said if he's a two-time graduate of this school, he's more than qualified to do what he says he does, which is transcribe a language.
Wow.
That's Scott Nelson. And anyway, he was teaching school in Missouri when he ran across our sounds accidentally through the BFRO website.
Oh, yeah.
And he drove all the way out from Missouri just to interview me and Al, and got the context, asked if he could study the sounds, the original sounds. So we let him. He comes back and says they have human language. That was a big hurdle, I thought, because again, there's not a lot of guys qualified to do what he does. And he's not like a regular language art form. You got to have the perfect hearing, a lot of things. They give you a pretty good test just to get into that school.
Mm-hmm.
You have to learn a new language as part of your test when you have to get in there.
Wow.
Well, they have, so they have a language.
Apparently, God calls the giants strange flesh, and that's why their souls can't get into heaven because they're not made from God. So I'm guessing Sasquatches. I'm guessing they're part of the Nephilim fallen angels. So that's why I said that.
Some kind. You've heard it. on more than one occasion. You've recorded it. And there's all kinds of sounds that you talked about, vocal ranges, outside of our own. But the one that people always, or people who are just getting familiar with Bigfoot and Sasquatch and the lore and the history and the evidence, we all know about the whoops that they make. What do you think the whoop is? Does that mean? Is that a particular thing that they do for? I'm sure.
So like wood knocking,
Yeah,
but vocalized.
I think
version
it's a single to one another one, and
Yeah.
it depends on the intonation of the whoop. Because I got different sounds of whoops recorded that I got
Really?
on the second CD, and I think it's saying something to another one.
Oh,
Generally, that'll
I
happen
did,
before they
yeah.
ever interact with you.
Strange fresh. Yeah,
Your
I didn't see that,
reactions
Tricky.
would be. And they're saying something to another one, either by codes, because they do pound on rocks and trees and stuff like that. But that's what I think anyway. I think they're talking to each other without talking. Because once they started chattering, like Albert Osman said, they were chattering. So Albert Osman was supposedly kidnapped by one years ago.
Oh yeah, that's right.
In Toba Inlet in Canada, and he was held hostage for 6 days into this bowl up there in
Yes.
Canada.
Hmm.
And John
Geez,
Green
that'd be a
interviewed him in
fascinating story.
1954, I think it was 52. And I read about that before I went up to Toba Inlet. I went up there in my plane just researching, trying to find where that bowl where it was kept. Because the way he got out was he had some chewing tobacco.
Oh, that's right. I forgot about that.
Yeah, the Bigfoot thought he was enjoying that, so he wanted some, so he gave it and he swallowed it, got sick. He shot out of there and started describing everything, all the way to Mount Bakery, everything that he could see and how it was going. Came out and told his story, but anyway, that's an interesting story. But,
Yeah.
We couldn't confirm it, because we never could find the bowl. We had 2 helicopters on standby over Camel River just to get in there. We would have found it. I flew slow all day long over the whole area, but I had to question if he was really in Toba Inlet, because some things didn't make sense in the story when he said how he was getting there, and then that rode him up there, and what time it happened, and what he's seen out in the inlet when he was there, the ships were going by. From the altitude he said he was at, I dropped my plane down and couldn't see like he said he saw. So there's a lot of inlets up there. I mean, they're all over the place.
Yeah, I bet.
He could have went into something else. I don't know, but I'll never know, because he's, I'm sure, passed away, and John's passed away. And
Wow.
we're all
Yeah.
dying, that's what we're here for. We start dying as soon as they cut the umbilical cord, right?
The clock.
Right.
The clock is running.
Yeah.
Has anybody ever tried to not replicate, or maybe replicate the experience that you have had? Because as far as I'm aware, the Sierra Sounds, the samurai chatter, as they also refer to it, this is it. I've listened to Sasquatch Chronicles, tons of other podcasts and YouTube, videos, and I've never found anything else that comes close to what you have. Are you aware of anybody else being able to have this
Not
experience?
that's recorded.
Yeah.
Recorded. The experiences I've heard that people have had encountered them, but most people want to run away from things they don't understand or shoot it.
Right, but you didn't.
No, that's why we kept having encounters, I think, because we didn't shoot them, they didn't eat us, so we're all happy.
Everybody gets along.
But I'll tell you what, we always had guns, high-powered guns.
Yeah.
We didn't know, and we just didn't know. But there's other things that bother you up there besides these things if they wanted to.
Sure.
I got a hat band made out of a 52-inch rattlesnake that was shot on the trail up there one time.
Is that what's on the band right
No,
now?
no, that's alligator. And it's one shark.
Oh yeah, it is.
Lost the alligator. Couldn't wrestle another alligator at this age, so had to buy a shark tooth to fill it in.
All right, everyone. There you go. There's the first half of the Ron Moorhead Bigfoot interview. What do you guys think so far?
That's the first 2 feet.
Pretty interesting.
The first foot has.
Ron Moorhead was awesome to talk to.
Yeah.
We get into a little more, it gets a little more woo, if you will, in the second half. But it was fascinating. Fascinating talking to Ron about his experiences. I could tell from the comments, a lot of you guys were really enjoying it. A lot of connections.
That one where the guy was kidnapped by Bigfoots for 6 days. I'd love to see that link.
like the Nephilim, and even Ron gets some of that.
Yeah.
You know,
He
like you
refers to
said.
them as the Anunnaki, but it's basically we're kind of talking about the same thing.
Yeah.
Just
Yeah.
from different perspectives and
Yep.
using different terms. So
Yeah, only halfway through, guys. That's right, Tricky. You're
Yep.
exactly right. I'm glad you guys are enjoying it.
yeah.
Tennessee, Kentucky Bigfoot. Hey, welcome. Glad you're watching.
Oh, nice.
We're not necessarily a Bigfoot channel, but we have the honor and privilege of interviewing Ron Moorhead. So I hope you enjoyed the interview. Glad you're here.
Harvey Weinstein is here.
Harvey Weinstein.
Yeah, you're welcome. We were happy to have Ron as well. We're glad you're here, Harvey. And someone had mentioned, a couple of people had mentioned in there about getting Scott Carpenter on, who is a Christian Bigfoot guy. And he's an author as well. I would like to, we're getting close to the time to start booking more guests. I had booked guests out, like back in January, I booked guests out into May, like maybe even into June. And so we kind of took a hiatus from booking guests because I booked out way too far. I was way too aggressive. So now that we're on the back end of April and we're about to go into May, I'm going to start reaching out to guests again to start rounding out our June calendar and start filling up our July calendar. So I think Scott Carpenter might be on that list of potentials that I'm going to reach out to. I got it on the whiteboard at home.
That'd be awesome. Yeah, that'd be awesome, man. Love that.
In the meantime, while Nick is getting part 2 of the interview pulled up, we can go ahead and talk about our books.
Yes, we got to do that. That way we can like write it off on our taxes.
Yes.
That's not a joke.
Nope. You're welcome, Uncle Sam.
Start with yours.
Yeah. When Nick and I first started the Gosslings, it started out as a writers group because we're both Christian authors, novelists. And then it turned into a YouTube channel where we had fun hanging with our friends and talking about books and writing, our books and stuff. And then now it's sort of turned into this awesome interview channel. But at its heart, we are still a couple of Christian authors, novelists,
Amen,
who still really enjoy getting back to our roots every now and then and talking about our books. Talking about writing. That's why we do the fireside chats with Stephen Pressfield. Once a quarter. We got one of those coming up this summer, so that's going to be a lot of fun. But anyways, my series of books is called Heavenly Realms. It's a 7-novel series about the wars between the angels. It is fantasy, Christian fiction, war fiction. It's all about angelic warfare. Aren't really a lot of humans in it. It's not really about people. It's about angels, but the angels are very human. It's sort of like 300 meets Kingdom of Heaven meets Braveheart meets Lord of the Rings meets the Bible.
Yeah.
It's Rome Total War with angels.
Yeah.
So, and it's a 7-novel series. 6 of the novels are published. And then I have the 7th novel that I got the edits back on. So I just got to get a cover for it and complete the edits, and then I'm done with the series.
Cool.
So, The Heavenly Realms. QR code is right there on the screen. You can click it and go to the page. And and then there is Nick's book, Henry Half Moon.
Henry Half Moon, which is paranormal urban fantasy about a young NYU college student in Manhattan. He doesn't really believe in God, but all of a sudden he's thrust into this adventure. And really, it's a faith journey. He's called by gods he doesn't even believe in to travel into the alternate dimension and battle a race of demons known as the Algalim, who are trying to usher in the birth of the beast.
Yeah.
And he's got to stop it. And he's not as successful as you think he might be.
It's a really cool book. I was really fortunate to be sort of along for the ride. Nick and I were hanging out when he was writing this, doing our writers' nights. And if you are into any of the strange Christian esoterica that we cover here on the Gosslings, such as Gary Wayne's stuff, Derek Gilbert, Ryan Pitterson, Micah Turnbow, all those like really colorful, kind of cool, topics that we talk about, you will love Henry Half.
And you'll especially love the audiobook. I'd say get the audiobook. It's better. It really is. And I'm a paperback type of guy. I don't like ebooks. Get the audiobook. It's fantastic.
Yeah.
And that's all I'll say about that. It's a great read. It's a lot of fun. It's pretty short too. It's not too long.
Yeah.
Anything else?
Let's see. Why don't you talk about the Buy Human
Ooh,
pledge?
Yeah, let's do this
Well,
real quick.
we're-
We're about to get into the second part of Ron Moorhead's interview,
Mhm.
but real quick. Uh, look, AI is coming,
Yeah.
and the deep fakes are coming,
Mm-hmm.
and it really surprisingly started with a takeover of the art world, the world of writing, the world
Yeah.
of the visual arts, music, and it's going to be increasingly difficult to know if the art that you like to purvey is being generated by AI or if a human being from their soul created that piece of art for you.
Yeah.
And as writers, that concerns us. We want to make sure that as creators, we are not using AI at all for any of the process whatsoever when we bring you our art form, which is writing. The AI pledge, the By Human pledge, is for authors, uh, illustrators, cover designers, editors,
Yeah.
musicians, composers. This is a pledge that you can take to assure your listeners, readers, viewers that you did the same, that you care, that what comes from your soul is delivered directly to theirs without the use of AI whatsoever.
Yeah.
And so if you're a creator and you want to make that public pledge, I'd encourage you to scan the QR code, go over there, add your name to the list,
Mm-hmm.
and join the resistance
That's
against
right.
AI. And I know, like, hey, you can't, there's no stopping AI. You might look, I get that, it's coming, but I would rather. That's a hill I will probably die on.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not going to use it to take any shortcuts to cheat. I want it to be 100% human created because it's created for you.
Yeah.
And so that is my pledge to you. You can go, you can read the pledge if you scan the QR code. Join us in our resistance against AI. None of this program, none of the images or the music, anything that we use for the Goslings is generated by AI whatsoever, and that it's going to stay that way.
Yeah.
Even if we fade into obscurity, we're never going to use AI.
Well, the great thing about it, the Buy Human pledge is free. Obviously, it's just like anything.
Yep.
You just sign up for it, and I personally look at it as an investment because a year from now, 5 years from now, I think people are going to want to find non-AI creatives to fulfill their objectives and their tasks for them.
Yep.
And so they're probably going to look at things like the Buy Human pledge to see
Yep.
who is actually on the list of
Yep.
dedicated people, who
Absolutely.
are refusing to use AI. So if you're a creative type, ironically, it might be the kind of thing that you can put on your resume 6 months from now.
Yep.
And actually get you some street cred and get your foot in the door where you need to be.
Yep. And
You never know.
And if you're a creator and you want to add your name to the list, you're not quite sure you want to do it. It's your name, the type of art you create, and your email. That email list, by the way, does not receive any emails whatsoever.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
I'm not gathering emails to send out anything whatsoever.
Yeah.
The only purpose for that email is that so you're sent an updated list when you sign up of how many people have signed on, so you can see how the percentage of artists versus editors, composers, so forth.
Mm-hmm.
You receive that email once you sign up, and you don't get anything after that. So we're not trying to sell anything. Like Jonathan said, it's totally free.
Yeah.
We just want a registry of artists that have made that pledge publicly.
Yeah. And it'll come in handy someday.
Yeah, it will. It will. We're gonna resist. Let's see what we got here in the chat. Let me scroll down.
Yeah, Kira OC says, "Thank you for the anti-AI disclaimer." You're welcome, Kira.
Yep.
We firmly believe in it. I mean, frankly, like Nick and I are kind of lucky just to be on the internet at all at this point.
At this point,
If it weren't for the Goslings, I don't think we'd have any social media. We wouldn't ever post anything on YouTube, and even then, you don't Nick hasn't really come back to social media. I've tried coming back to it, but like I've said before, it's like dancing with a corpse.
yeah,
So I despise it.
Yeah.
It just doesn't work for me, and if I could go to an email and a phone on the wall.
Oh yeah, same here. I'd start a Luddite club.
Yeah,
for all I'm concerned. Kira OC says, I know an awesome Christian writer / creator who uses AI art and it makes me so uncomfortable. Maybe
Yeah.
I'll say something I don't know. I get it. I mean, what if you had a pastor use AI to write their sermon?
Yeah.
What's the difference?
Right.
It's coming from the same soul.
Yeah. And that soul is not the creative person.
That's right.
That soul is something from the abyss.
Yep.
So yeah, I mean, you absolutely should say something to your friend Kira and give them the benefit of the doubt that like maybe they haven't thought it through or thought about it, or maybe they just don't know what the dialogue is about AI. Maybe they're just looking at it as a convenient thing of like, oh yeah, I can just create this, I don't have to worry about a cover art. I can just plug in a bunch of, keywords and it'll spit something out and then I don't have to worry about it anymore.
Yeah.
And I don't have to pay $400 or $200 or whatever. Like there are a bunch of reasons. I get it, but I think there are a bunch of reasons that will fall apart when people start thinking about it.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. When you think about the ubiquity of like smartphones, even though we will admit that they've done tremendous harm, social media has done tremendous harm, and if we could go back and do things differently, we all would.
Oh yeah,
but,
for sure.
But because it's so common now, where it's like it feels like there's no hope in changing. Well, we have a chance, and we're at the beginning of AI. This is the time to make a difference.
Yeah.
Not 10 years from now.
No.
This is the time to do something.
Yeah. It'll be too late by then.
Yeah. I'll leave the little QR code up there for a while, and I think that's all. Oh wait, I did want to read one more comment. It was by Randall Hill. It says AI is going to be the beast.
Mm-hmm.
There'll be an image in the metaverse. We will all have some sort of chip linking us to it. They'll make some AI robot that's the image come to life. Scripture verbatim. Yeah, 10 years ago, they would say, why don't you put your tinfoil hat on? Making comments like that. But you can see how that's actually possible now.
Oh, yeah.
Like, it's not conspiracy. Like, that could actually happen. This could be like what John envisioned 2,000 years ago. This could be what he was seeing. He didn't know how to describe it. We have the technology now to really see all that manifest easily.
Yeah. Al Ferry says there's no truth in AI. You're absolutely right, Al. That was actually one thing we were talking about in between our interview and the live stream tonight. Nick and Joe and I were sitting out on the patio enjoying the nice day, and we're talking about how, honestly, AI is going to perfect deep fakes to the point where however long it takes, whether it's a year, 5 years, something like another election cycle, maybe 2 election cycles down the road, no one's going to give any credence or credibility to the media at all anymore.
How can you trust it?
Yeah, because you can't trust any of it.
Yep.
You won't know what's real and what's fake anymore, and there'll be so much contention that like people will just write off all of it.
Yep.
I mean the enemy is going to blow themselves up with their own bomb. Basically, is what's going to happen.
Yeah.
Because even the normies, even the wokies are going to be like, there's no way they would say that. Well, we've proven that like some of this is deep fake stuff. And I mean, it happens now, and I'm telling you, like, it's going to, in a weird way, it's going to have to get worse before it gets better, but it gets better because eventually it will undermine itself to the point where no one will believe it anymore.
Yeah, no one will believe it, but it'll still be running everything.
Yeah. And then Skynet begins.
Hey,
dun 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 dun.
That's why we have guns.
Get yourself an AR-15.
Yeah, let's fight the robots and the aliens. We can shoot both of those.
Yeah,
robot aliens shooting aliens, right?
No, I mean
on the books yet.
You can't have human rights if you're not human. Geneva Convention.
That's a T-shirt.
You can't have rights. Great. You can't have rights if you're not human.
Yeah. Oh, Tricky says it's a digital Ouija board. Ooh, well said.
Yeah, that's a perfect way to describe it, Tricky. A digital Ouija board.
Yep. Humble Stranger says AI equals Antichrist incarnate. Possibly.
Yeah.
Possibly. Yeah. Yeah. Greetings, Brian. Let's see. He says, I've heard that interdimensional Bigfoots
have left hairs behind. Yeah, the hairs that they occasionally found have all had a lot of people have done like DNA testing with them, and there's always some like unknown DNA mixed in there. So yeah, we need to reach out to Scott Carpenter also. He would be a real good addition to this Ron Moorhead interview. You know?
Speaking of which,
yeah,
let's get back.
Yeah. Sorry, we've rambled for a long time. Here is part 2 of Ron Moorhead. Hope you guys enjoy.
So, what warning would you give people that want to go out and try to find Bigfoot?
Well, I say this: I don't think you'll find them. They'll find you if your attitude's right. And if you go into a hot area where they've been seen, where you think they might be, which a lot of those places exist now that people report them, just be still, set up a camp, don't change things too much. I got a whole warning list of things you do and things you don't do. You can't make it happen. They're either going to interact with you or they're not. And that's going to depend on you and who's with you and what your intentions are.
Yeah.
So that's my advice to people. And enjoy the experience.
Yeah, and enjoy.
Unless they tear your arm off, then you got the wrong spot.
You found the wrong tribe of Sasquatch. You found the hungry one. Well, so is there a benevolent or beneficial, I guess, purpose to someone wanting to do that? Like, can we learn something from these creatures? Can we interact with them? Can we build rapport with them? It's hard not to view these things through an antagonistic lens, but maybe I'm wrong in that. I don't know.
Well, I wouldn't view them with a antagonistic, because if that's going to happen, you probably won't ever see one or get close to them.
Yeah.
I think you just stay simple and let them be the aggressor. They have to be the aggressor, and just slowly react to them. Don't jump right in, sort of jump around the flashlight. Over here. Let me get your picture. Come pose for me. That's not going to happen. For some reason, they're not really supposed to interfere with us. They do.
I wanted to ask you about that. Why do they seem very powerful?
Okay, Tricky, good night, mate.
They seem like they
God
have
bless.
the ability to phase shift to, in and out of our light spectrum, and they seem to basically be able to be masters of the forest, masters of their domain. They can vanish like that. And if they don't want to vanish, they can throw a rock the size of your head, as far as they want to.
Upward a tree and chuck it across them.
Right. They could, they are the masters of the forest. So, but yet at the same time, they are so skittish. They are so elusive, in a way that makes me wonder, like, why? They hold all the cards. I'm in their house.
Well, probably because we shoot at them, because you always try to kill things you don't understand.
Okay.
There's hunters out there that, I've talked to hunters that's had them in their scope that couldn't pull the trigger.
Yeah.
They said, look too much of a human look to his face.
Wow. Yeah.
There's been 2 or 3 I've talked to like that.
Mm-hmm.
So, there are benevolent ones. I think they could be here to help us, and that may be why I'm supposed to be talking with you guys today. Maybe there's supposed to be something to learn from all this. I think if you're going out there wanting to learn, you've got a step above most people already. Out there wanting to shoot one, well, and they'll know that if you got a gun, it doesn't matter, because they'll know if you got the intent to do that or not. And maybe that's why they didn't show themselves more around us, is because we did have guns. Maybe they knew more about what we do than we would know. Saying that because we took our kids up there too when they became a little older.
Oh, wow. Okay.
But nothing ever happened hardly when they came around. Except my daughter, she can be a teenager. She was having some things happen up there.
Yeah, I heard you mention that in passing in one of your other interviews. Can you elaborate on that at all?
Yeah, which part?
I just remember hearing you mention. Yeah, I apologize.
She has saw them 3 times.
Is she really? Okay.
And one of them was just her and I was up there. We walked in, packed in, and we just got through eating, had our backs turned to the shelter. She got up to get a napkin or something off the, had a roll of towels around a big nail, and turned around and seen this thing over there standing at her about 70 feet away, just at dusk, just about to get dark. And she couldn't talk. She just going like this, to me. That's what. And finally I stood up. By the time I stood up and turned around, it was gone. But there was a lot of trees there. I went over there later, not later that night, but in the morning, because they won't mess up anything. She said it was a little over 7 foot tall compared to me. I mean, I was a little taller then. I used to hang glide too, I used to be taller than I am now. For that accident.
You had a hang gliding accident?
Yeah, like I said, I used to be taller.
That's a way of stretching you out a little bit when you're on the thing. You
No,
know?
I really did.
Until you land.
I hit the bar.
Did you really?
Yeah, I just nosed into the ground.
Oh,
It hurt.
Yeah, I bet it did. Yeah, took an inch off your overall height. Yeah,
Ah,
Well, my feet got bigger.
Not that big then. So,
Well, you know what Dr. Edgar Mitchell said? I'm going to throw this out there. He said it takes classical and quantum sciences together to have clear perception.
yes.
I wish all researchers would take that to heart, realize there's more going on than what you can see. You know, our olfactory sense is not as good as a bear or a dog. A bear can smell 20 times better than us. A dog 7 times better than us.
yeah.
And we don't hear ultrasound or infrasound, but those sounds are out there. We just don't hear them. Like I said before, our eyesight's not what other things have. And
Yeah.
people need to realize we have human limitations in this body. And they need to know that when they're out in the woods and realize that there's other dimension going on where you can actually access through your feeling, through your gut feeling what to do.
Yeah.
And, unless your brain says run, that's usually not the right thing to do when you run across something. Well, I shouldn't say that.
Well, it's not when it's a mountain lion. You know?
Right, yeah.
Yeah.
That's when he's licking his chops, right?
Right, yeah. Yeah, because then you're just a cat toy at that point. You know, a little battery-powered cat toy. So.
I have a question. So there's all this evidence. There are all these accounts, personal accounts, and experiences people have had. You recorded the sounds. Your daughter's seen one. Your friends have seen. It's like there's thousands of accounts out there. Why do people, the public, just in general, why do they have such a hard time believing in the reality of this?
Because I think we've all been conditioned by our schooling, by our government. We've been conditioned to think certain ways. And the government has not acknowledged it, just like the Roswell incident. And they won't acknowledge it as long as they can't control it. And I don't think they can control the UFOs. They pretty much admit that. So, but they haven't acknowledged it because too many people are seeing them. And too many people are seeing the Bigfoots now. And I think it's got to come out where they're out there. But then again, I think I mentioned this earlier, then there's got to be a study. Science once acknowledges, there's enough information, we better take this thing serious. Then they're going to want grants from the government. The government's going to appropriate $2 billion to study, and then they're going to put off limits to all the hunters going out there, and it's going to cause a lot of chaos. It's going to throw a kink into religions because a lot of religions don't go for this at all. I've tried to present my program to churches, and those are the hardest ones because they got their arms crossed. They've been trained from the age of 5 not to believe in monsters, not to believe in the Nephilim, are out there.
I know. Tell me about it.
That's the Anunnaki, but you can't, in my opinion, that's the Anunnaki. So,
we've talked about that a lot too.
Yeah.
About,
We've talked a lot about the Nephilim.
And the churches are in a failed state, largely a couple reasons, but one of which is because they just won't talk about the Genesis 6 issue. And there are a number of reasons why, but there are plenty of people who have questions out there, and you say, okay, there's all this other wild stuff that happened, but you're telling me when it's this, it wasn't angels, it was just some good guys and some bad chicks, like,
Yeah.
wow. Aliens and fallen angels are the same to me.
We talk about that too. We often, we draw a pretty strong correlation between a lot of alien encounters and demonic encounters. We are of the mind that a lot of alien encounters, especially abductions, are more demonic, spiritual, and supernatural in nature. And the Nephilim, there's a lot of overlap here between ancient civilizations, pre-flood, Tower of Babel, post-flood, and then Nephilim, Anunnaki, what you would call, and just these elevated spiritual beings coming down and interfering with God's plan for humanity and in our side
Creation.
in creation in a way that monkeys up the whole thing. Very poor choice of words. Sorry. But and we've often talked about the Bigfoot connection in light of that, or sort of in that. In fact, when I was 18 years old, my Bible class senior project was on this. I think actually, in regards to like the gap theory and how like Bigfoot was part of the gap theory, you could kind of do it on whatever you wanted. It was private Christian school; they didn't care, But there seemed to be some sort of connection constantly that we're coming back to with these things that they're not human, they're not animal, there's something else, and there seems to be some sort of persistent supernatural element to it that, for lack of a better term, and it never seems to go away.
What do you think is the connection between
Aliens.
aliens and Sasquatch?
Well, I think aliens probably created them. The progenitor of Bigfoot through a primate of some type is here. I don't disbelieve in evolution. I just think it's got a whole lot of holes in it. It doesn't explain consciousness. It doesn't explain how we have deja vus, how any of that stuff happens, that we've got inside our ethereal body, inside of us. And yet later on, I say later on, eons later, after Bigfoot was probably around before we were, I think.
Yep.
Something very special created us, a ninth frequency entity. That's very high. That's EOM, which is plural again. And if you think about the different personalities that in the Old Testament about God, well, who changed it to singular? Jews or the Hebrews, or who did it? But I think there's probably more than one. There's a lot of ninth dimensional beings. Most of the aliens that you're seeing out there that we're hearing about are, I think, fifth and sixth dimensional beings. The fourth dimension is light, or the ghosts, where the ghost people are seeing that through us. Sometimes you'll see ghosts, and it depends on the temperature and the plasma field. But that's seen by some people can see that, and that's where we're going right after this. And you got where you got elevated to, or you just got to learn some more. I was taught that no, this is it. You go there's a judgment one time, and that's it. No, right. Must die after the judgment. Well, that's the one place in the Bible. Well, sure, you're going to get judged because the judgment's going to be what did you learn and what didn't you learn. You want to go back and learn it.
One thing that I've never heard anybody talk about was in regards to ghosts. You just said it, the plasma field. Can you elaborate on what you mean by that? I've never heard of that before.
Yeah, well, it's really oh gosh, gotta be careful here. I haven't said it a lot, but I know. No, I can't elaborate on that.
Really? Okay.
Well, I call it the plasma field in a couple places, but I did some looking into it. I think that's where they are because it's kind of a foggy area, which we don't see with our restricted vision.
Yeah.
But sometimes you do if the temperature's right. And look into it though. That's a good question, and I should do it more so I can answer that question better.
We'll get you back for part 2, Ron. Plasma field with Ron Moorhead. So I wanted to ask you, while we still had time, we got probably about half an hour or so. Your books, Quantum Bigfoot and Voices in the Wilderness. Would you elaborate on both of those books, why you wrote them, what they're about, and where people can find them?
I'd love to. With the encouragement of Al Berry, who I talked about, his reporter that we took in, he said, you need to write your story. And it was 2012 when I wrote my chronicle, Voices in the Wilderness. That's my chronicle. Into it. In that book, I used to present a CD with the sounds when I get to the context of the sound we was listening to. You hear the sound itself. Now it comes with just a download of that sound because I couldn't get Amazon or to pack it like I wanted it. I was doing all this myself. I couldn't keep up with it. So I just put a download link in there. So when you buy the book, you get the download link and you can hear the sound when you read the part of where I get to the context of it. So you know what I went through, what always going through up in there and where it took me then. Excuse me. And it wasn't until 2017, I think, when I wrote the Quantum Bigfoot. And this is pretty much totally different other than it is about Bigfoot and how they did the stuff they did with us. They still do today. There are too many people reporting, oh, I saw one disappear, I saw this, I saw that. Which same thing we was experiencing up there. You know, we had trackway disappear. How does that happen? You just don't talk about it. No, it can't happen. Most researchers say, well, the helicopter picked them up. Well, no, I don't think so. It doesn't work like that.
Okay.
They write the account off, and I just wouldn't write them off. I had a guy years ago. I was in a board meeting up in Canada. All the company up there, and he's a suit and tie guy. He said, you find out my interest in the subject. I can take you to a place above Fairbanks. I saw one disappear. Of course, at that time, I wanted to cut his tie off, you know, but I didn't. I didn't kick him out with baby water. But I just said, oh, and I just, you know, that's interesting. So, but then since then, I've heard other people say they saw him disappear. And I know a professor that saw him disappear, supposedly. And I know another lady, a very intelligent person who saw him disappear. You got Native American lore way back. It says they live in two worlds.
Yeah.
Where do you go with that one? And they say they're spirit beings who can disappear. Well, there's something to that. So you got to look into it. And I think the answer is quantum physics, not to be construed or confused with the paranormal or the woo.
Mm-hmm.
Because the woo is something made up by what we think. And what you get into quantum physics is actual science. How does this stuff work? Like I mentioned, Paul Dirac, antimatter, energy and matter interchangeable, stuff like that. You got to get into what really supports that statement. So I try to support my statements with some type of fact that I didn't state myself. You can say something, it doesn't mean a thing unless you establish by some DC somewhere, right?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
I call myself a citizen scientist because I think regular classical science, with the parameters it has, and it does have parameters it can't step out of, they're restricting themselves. And researchers are restricting themselves too when they use classical science by itself. When Edgar Mitchell said it takes both the classical and quantum sciences together for true perception. I think they are hurting themselves when they don't use the other sciences out there to try to understand something going on. Mm-hmm. I've had people come in private. They just won't tell anybody because they get laughed at if they think they're crazy. Tell me about some anomalies, some strange things that happen. And I know what they're talking about because there's an answer to it. There's an answer to anything. It's either crazy, it's not to be credible, or there's a science behind it. So I had to find the science behind the stuff that was happening to us, and I got into quantum Bigfoot. So I started answering those. I got a few more things I want to get into in this book I'm writing now, which I hope to have out this summer. It's hard. Cool. There's a lot to do, a lot of research to do for those. You don't want to get something wrong, and you don't want to get shot down because.
Sure.
Anyway, that's the story of my two books. I have two CDs also. The first CD is Al Berry's story. He wrote it. I produced it on CD with Jonathan Frakes, Star Trek Next Generation.
Nice. All right.
He narrated it for me down in Burbank. And then the second one, though, I saved some money and I narrated it myself.
Cool.
Quite a bit of money, really. And so anyway, got those two CDs. Everything's downloadable. You can get it in the hard copy, not the CDs, but you can get the hard copy of the books.
Yeah.
It's Amazon, and or you can download it. And the CDs, you pretty much have to download those or catch me at a convention because I'm taking a bunch of them down to Ocala this weekend. I'm speaking.
Okay.
With
awesome.
With David Pilates and Jeff Melvin and Ronnie LeBlanc.
And could people get, like, say, signed autographed copies or something like that? Do they have to go to those conventions, or could they go to ronmorehead.com for any of that stuff? Or are there any sort of?
I don't stock them here at home. I don't
Okay.
normally stock them. I do have the CDs here just because I had a bunch of them delivered. So because David ordered 60 of them the other day a while back. I gotta have those for wholesale. Because I do wholesale this stuff out to some of these shops around.
Yeah.
2 or 3 of them in the Pacific Northwest, and then BigfootStore.com. It's got a stock then. So that's how you get the hard copy of the CD if they've got them. Once they run out, they will probably be out. And then because most people are getting out of CDs now.
Oh yeah, it's a shame. I hang on to all my CDs. I refuse to let go. Have you had any encounters since you've moved? Since you got out of the
No,
Pacific
I haven't.
Northwest?
I've been kind of quiet back here. You know, just
Yeah.
kind of a newbie on the block. I've been here a year and a half. But I just haven't hooked up with other Bigfooters. I kind of try to keep a low profile back here. And the ones that do find out about it, put something on here, and I just didn't go to them. You know, I don't like going to them. Let me take that back. I like being there.
Yeah.
I don't like traveling anymore. You know, these airports are crazy.
Oh,
So when I had my own airplane, I could fly to it when I wanted to, and take my time and do it the way I wanted to do it. But anymore, getting through security and all that stuff.
oh, it's a nightmare. You have to show up 3 hours ahead of time.
Well, the
Yeah.
only good part about it is at my age, I don't have to take my shoes off anymore. But,
Yeah, tell me about it. Then I remember what it was like. I mean, even before 9/11, it was so much fun to
It was
fly.
fun.
Yeah,
yeah,
I mean,
it's not fun anymore.
no, it's not. It takes all the joy out of it.
Well,
Last
you got to
time-
be there so early, and you got to go through all this crap, and then you go into some of these big hubs, you know, to get a transfer
Hey,
to
Jay!
an airplane or something.
Oh.
My gosh, you got to run. Why don't run anymore?
yeah, you got to catch the tram, the little shuttle tram thing.
Yeah,
You know,
right.
but, it's such a tragedy too for like people who are younger. It's like, man, if you're under like 25 or 30 and you're watching this, it's like you have no idea how awesome life used to be.
Oh,
You know what I mean?
yeah, I do know what you mean. I was around. I'm a Elvis Presley guy.
Nice.
I seen him alive, and I seen Bigfoot alive, so there I got that to say.
I think there was a Far Side about that, Ron. I'm not. I think there's a Far Side of like Bigfoot and Elvis hiding out in the same house together. Looking through the blinds, making sure no one was like spotting them.
Well, I didn't see him at the same time. I got to tell you that.
Okay. Well, you can't have everything.
I went to an Elvis Presley concert in '74, I think it was.
That's cool.
Very
man.
cool.
That is cool.
Took my two daughters there. And, they remember that the rest of their life. They like Alice today just because of the concert. It was fantastic.
Yeah.
I mean, you thought it was the second coming the way they started out. I don't know if you guys ever seen it.
No.
Yeah,
Tell us about it.
2001 Odyssey music. My gosh, you thought the scene of the whole casino was going to open up. Elvis would drop down or something, but it was really chilling.
That's awesome.
Good job. It was a fantastic experience.
Long live the king, baby. Let me tell you.
Now, let me say this one more thing. I think I may have mentioned it before, but
Yeah.
I'd really like to get this point across when it's on this program.
Yes.
We're on this planet for a reason.
Yeah.
For the experience. That's the experiences. Everything we're experiencing is for us to learn from and to respond properly from. Respond to everything with love and compassion. You're going to raise your personal frequency, and you're going to go where you need to go when you get out of here.
Mm-hmm.
Just saying, we're all going to get out. We're all heading for something, right?
Yeah.
Well,
Yes.
we don't know for sure what, but we got our ideas. We hope for this, hope for that. But trust me, if you treat everything with love and compassion, and don't say something bad about somebody unless you just say what's good. Don't say what's bad. I say it's bad about Roger. I'm sorry. Forgive me, Joe.
Don't worry, he's not watching.
What if he is? What if Joe Rogan's watching right now?
If he is, Joe,
Yeah.
we love you.
Yeah.
We love you.
I met the man twice actually. I was at his recording in 2012 at the Tabernacle in Georgia. Like, dude, I used to watch that show back when it was like single digit episodes.
Yeah, before it was
Yeah,
cool.
yeah.
Before Joe Rogan.
I'm a Joe Rogan hipster. Yeah.
He's pretty
Look at
cool
me.
now. He's got some good talkers on this. They're good guests. And,
Yeah.
He has really found his groove. It's so funny how the world like shifts. It's like it used to be, Walter Cronkite reading the news. It used to be Larry King doing the interviews, and nowadays, for the past 10 years, it's been Joe Rogan, who has been like the lodestone of interesting,
Right.
truth-seeking interviews.
And
You
Ben
know,
Shapiro.
Networks tell you anymore.
No, not at all. And that guy, he's about as independent as it gets.
He's, I think it's the mistrust in the networks in media, government institutions,
Yeah.
education, healthcare. It's the mistrust that really which is their own fault.
Oh yeah, they do it to themselves.
Absolutely. I think they are responsible for Joe Rogan being the #1 podcast in the world.
Yeah,
In the
absolutely.
world. Because people just
Yeah.
they're truth seekers.
Mm-hmm.
And they know where not to go if they're seeking truth.
And out of everybody it could have been, Ron is the friggin' fear factor guy.
Yeah,
You know?
it's the fear factor guy.
I mean,
Well, that's one of the things you got to watch for
what's that?
when you're out in the woods. Is don't let the fear take over. That's your only enemy.
I was going to ask you about that. You know,
Fear is important. I didn't have fear up there after a while because you just learn. In fact, I went up there by myself just to beat that, and that's not the right thing to do, but I did. And it's very important that people learn how to control their fear because it's the other mind that we can't work with. You know, so you can't serve two masters, or you got the one master that's your brain right here that's trying to tell you this, tell you the analytical master. And you've got the other masters trying to tell you something through your pineal gland into your heart, and that's the two masters I think there are. And if you let the negative take over out here instead of the positive in your heart here, then I think you're not doing the right thing. I just encourage everybody to listen to their heart, gut feeling, and meditate. I think prayer is when you're asking for something. Meditation is when you're trying to receive something. Just get quiet and be still and just blank out.
Yeah, you know, there's a lot of misconceptions in the church because of bad preaching about what prayer is supposed to be. You know, and because you get all these guys who are like, oh, if you do what God wants you, He'll bless you with $1 million. You know, it's like I don't know if you guys are like read the Bible or not, but like, you know.
Here's the thing about prayer, in my opinion. It says it's 2 or 3 gathered together in His name. Well, you got to know what His name really means. It's not Jesus is who He was, Christ. You know, Christ was a ethereal part. Is that right? Energy man, and Jesus was a physical man. Well, you got to get in the Christ mindset and be whoever you're with have the same mindset. You can do miracles.
Yeah.
I mean,
you know, that's a good way of putting it, Ron. And you can tell when you get together with other people and there's just this certain relaxed, positive, you know, for lack of a better term, vibe, this like truly Christian vibe that comes over you. And you can, like, for us in the Christian world, we talk about it when we're in the spirit. We feel like we're in the spirit when you're having a conversation with somebody and you're talking about movies and you're talking about music, you know, but then all of a sudden at some point the conversation shifts and you can feel it shift into this really divine place, this very holy, sacred kind of place. And it's exactly what's in the text there. And yeah, it's just, and it's almost indescribable. I'm a writer and I don't know.
You're in the same vibration, you know.
Yeah, and there really is a lot to that.
There's some people I don't want to pray for me because they don't know how to pray for you. They pray against you, not even know it. They mean well, but they're not saying the right thing.
Right. Yeah.
They say, "Oh, take care of this cancer he's got," or whatever. Well, I don't have it, you know. Tell me I got it.
Yeah, don't put that evil on me, Ricky Bobby. Come on.
That's the way they think. It's just, you know, if you're saying, "Oh, I got a cold," well, if you got a cold, why?
Yeah.
First of all, here's another thing. You raise your personal vibrational frequency high enough and start taking everything like I mentioned earlier, you don't get sick anymore.
That is so bizarre.
That is so neat. And so I've had a cold and I can't remember when.
Isn't that crazy? Yeah.
And it just
that mind over matter thing, Ron, you know?
Yeah, if you don't mind, it don't matter.
No, truly, there are people like that who just they never get sick. Yeah.
Well, I've been pretty fortunate. I've had a very fortunate life, really, and I'm thankful for it. It's the life I chose, I guess, somewhere, or at least I've been very active the first 75 years of my life, and the last 5 since I had brain surgery here a few years back, and there was a tumor off my left side of my cerebellum.
Oh, wow.
Left me with a little balance issue and eyesight issue and a couple things like that, but I'm still upright, getting around. But I'm just saying, I could easily consider myself a victim right then. I didn't know it was going to do all this to me.
Yeah.
You got to be thankful because it's teaching me something. I got empathy and I have more compassion for people that's got the same issue, or at least that walk around with a cane or something, or a walker. That's one reason I don't go out in the field anymore, out in the woods anymore, because I don't get around that well.
Yeah, yeah.
When I still get around, I just don't want to have to jump over a log or something or try to cross the river.
I'm in perfectly good health, and I don't want to be doing that either, Ron.
Well, stay that way. I was in perfectly good health too. Just don't ever don't let them cut through your skull.
Right. But man, that's amazing. I had no idea. I mean, I've been.
Well, I don't go around bragging about it.
Yeah.
It's just the way. This is part of life, and you
Yeah.
accept it. I'm not a victim. It's just you accept it.
Yeah.
And learn from it, and just be that way about everything, and things are going to work out for you in the long run.
What is it that? Because that can be a very scary thing for people. In fact, I was just talking to a girl last week who had a brain tumor removed. What are some things that you have learned that you could pass on for people having been in that situation of having to have brain surgery?
Well, just go ahead and die instead.
Just check out. Just move on. Go to phase 2.
Well, really, I don't know what type of tumor she had. Mine was benign, and
I think hers was too.
Yeah, but there's also medical. AIs are going to take over medical field anyway. But I think the medical industry is just going to change dramatically within your lifetime. And I don't know what to tell her because I don't know if she's having side effects or not. But therapy is important. I don't know how old she is, but my age has something to do with mine. And it's just be happy all the way through it.
Yeah. She seemed like it. She was young, or she is young.
Well, she can take therapy and everything will be just fine.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe. I don't know how bad it was, but they also have the laser knife they talk about or something like that. Where they don't have to cut in through your skull. Because once oxygen hits your skull, your brain, I mean, it's off the board. They don't know what's going to happen after that.
Oh, really?
But they try. And I'll say that. They will try. And I've watched those surgeries, and it's spooky when you watch it. I know there's going to do that to me. So
right.
I'll choose the other door, thanks. But since I'm here, I must have more to do.
You must, man.
Talk with guys like you and try to get the word out that I think is important.
That is awesome. Ron, this has been amazing.
Yeah, this has been a great conversation.
Yeah.
I've really enjoyed this.
Let's see. I want to make sure I'm not missing anything. This is my notepad, by the way, it's pretty much full at this point with notes that I've taken during the interview. One, we'd love to have you back sometime, especially after the summer, when your book is out. Anything we could do to help promote you, we would love to be able to do. And then our slogan for the Gosslings is, or our mantra, I guess, is take up the broken sword of your father and strike down the darkness. And that's kind of what we try to do here on the Gosslings. We interview unique and interesting people who have a positive, beneficial message for our audience.
Strike down the darkness.
To strike down the darkness. So if you had anything that you would want to say to our audience to help encourage them or help strike down the darkness, what would that be, Ron?
Well, don't give it too much energy.
Yeah.
Everything's energy, frequency, vibration. Whatever you put your energy towards is where your life's going to go.
Yeah.
So I just say I don't entertain that stuff. I don't even watch the news. We don't watch the news hardly ever. I don't watch the dark pictures, the dark stuff, because it just fills that brain up. Your brain's an amazing thing. It will fill in the holes. You're out in the woods and you see something you don't understand, you can think it's a Bigfoot because that's what you've been thinking about or something. If you're out, where you put your thoughts, where you put your energy, and again, your thoughts go faster than the speed of light. So, where your consciousness goes, how do you get telekinesis? How do you get telepathy?
Yeah.
We've all had those things happening, and that's not of the devil. But people want to call other religions of the devil because it doesn't agree with them. Well, I know that you can put it all together. Unless if it teaches love and compassion, I'm all for it. If it teaches go to hell and all that stuff, I don't like that. I just don't put my energy in there.
Yeah.
That's just how I am. Not everybody's gonna be that way for sure. I was raised in a different environment than this for sure.
Yeah, not good.
Do you think there's anything that if we could ever get to a place where we could communicate with Sasquatch, do you think there's anything that we can learn from them?
Oh yes.
Give me an idea.
Listen. I thought about going back up there again.
Yeah.
Probably riding a horse like I did with David that time, Pilates. But I'm not sure. I don't know what it's like because the thing was on fire a few years ago. Did fly over in a little plane just to look it over. But where our camp was up there wasn't burnt a lot. Didn't look like it was burnt from the air anyway. So it may, if we took the actual shelter down in 2015, I didn't, but the Johnsons did. And that was because the Forestry Service found out about all the stuff we had. But they was ready for the apocalypse back there, Ammunition buried, all kinds of stuff.
Yeah.
Took out 9 mule loads of stuff we took out. But
Wow.
it's still the camp is still there. It's just you can't, what you take in, you got to take out. So I go in again, I got to take a 10 in and I got to take it out. So I'm going to take a mule. Help me.
That's what they're there for.
Well, yeah.
Do you think, I meant to ask this earlier, and I apologize. Given their nature, from what you have ascertained of being these hybrid beings of, alien or, extra dimensional creations mixed with terrestrial matter or terrestrial humans, they seem to be as varied as we are in their temperament, in their dispositions, maybe even in their sophistication. People go into the woods, they see like these canopies of trees, they see the crisscross things.
Mm-hmm.
They have a language. Do you think they have technology and a civilization that we just aren't capable of appreciating yet?
Well, I don't know about the capability. I think we're capable of a lot of things we're not showing, but they don't know if they're totally alien or if they are a hybrid type being or what created them, what integrated with what attributes they give them. They gave some of them the ability to speak like we do. Something created us very special, and I think we're understand who you are as a human. We're very, very, very special, and if you understand that part, you'll know that you have dominion here, and these things don't. And they stay away from humans as much as possible. However, things are trying to happen on this planet right now. It's just getting worse with the warring and all that. And we just got to make things better. And it's up to us to spread as much peace and love as we can. And I think that's what they say at the beauty pageants, isn't world peace.
Yeah. Well, you mentioned something too. I think when we were talking earlier, you said next year you think things might even get crazier.
Yeah, it seems like it's headed that way. To me, that's just my opinion, and several other people's opinion too. It's because it's heading off into crazy land here, and I think it's more important than ever that we know who we are as humans and get our feet on solid foundation, and know who we're created, what we're created from, and the attributes that were given to us as humans, and how we can evolve into them through knowing who you are all the way and what this embodiment really means. It's not your only one. It hasn't been, in my opinion. I was totally different when I was younger. But I do believe in multiple embodiments because I think you have to clean up what you've been just doing wrong in the past. That's why even Christ said, you have to, Peter said, when you become a Christian, you have to confess that you're a sinner. You have to confess all your sins at that time. After you become a Christian, that's start confessing your sins. So he knew then. You had previous embodiments that you don't even remember, you don't even know about. And you need to confess that you sin in those things. And, well, that's my opinion again. All this stuff's my opinion, pretty much.
Right. Understood.
Ron, it is.
Go ahead.
Oh, I know we're creeping up on the end. I just wanted to say what an honor it is to talk to you and how enjoyable this has been. You are super authentic, really grounded. You're very humble and extremely well educated. You have tons of amazing experiences.
Great stories.
Yeah. Thank you, man. This is like I've been looking forward to this.
Oh no, me too.
For we've been pretty jazzed about this for about 2 months now. So
thank you. I appreciate that
awesome.
comment.
Yeah, and listen, anytime you want to come to Tennessee, baby, we'll take you camping. You know.
Oh, that's the thought. Yeah. Why don't you email me something?
Open invitation.
I got your email address because I do go up there because I got a, like I said, convention in October up there someplace.
Oh yes, yeah, I do want to find that information out.
And my son he's trying to buy a home right now, but right now he's living where you guys are.
Yeah. I'm telling you, man. Anytime, I will buy your dinner. Absolutely.
Feel free to forward.
Oh, no, that's worth the trip now. Yeah.
I will buy you a steak and seafood dinner at the best Captain D's around. No.
Oh,
I don't know. Yeah.
I don't know. He meant to sell a kidney to pay for it.
Yeah, fair enough.
Yeah, I tried to get him to take my kidney at the grocery store, but it wasn't worth it. They said.
Yeah, that sounds about right. Yeah, we'll be bartering organs, in 5 years.
Could be, yeah.
Well, Ron, thanks, man. This has been so much fun.
I
Our audience
you guys,
is gonna love it, and we really would love to have you back on, and we'd love to stay connected. And
thank you.
Yeah. So thank you very much for spending some time with us today.
Thank you. You guys take care.
All right, you too, sir. Take care.
See you later.
Bye bye.
Hey, if you get
Okay, I got another one, guys.
Hello and welcome to the Sharpening Report. I am very pleased to announce we have a returning guest tonight, Dr. Judd Burton, author of Interview with the Giant, plus several groundbreaking papers, and his website is burtonbeyond.com. If you'd like to learn more, we will have that link for you in the description below. Judd, it's great to have you back on the Sharpening Report. How are you doing?
Great to be back, Josh. I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm doing great. I'm really glad that you reached out and wanted to do this. This is one of my favorite topics, and I want to just jump right in because, as you know, because you actually contributed an interview for this, I have a new book coming out later this year on the Dead Sea Scrolls, Essenes, and Prophecy. And I know the whole topic of the Dead Sea Scrolls is something you've always had an interest in as well. What first led to that interest? How did you first get introduced to this topic, and what was it about it that you found so appealing?
Well, the Dead Sea Scrolls, I should say that I was exposed to them in church, but not in a churchy kind of a way. I guess might be a way because they were always this sort of nebulous, arcane set of documents, that the preacher would drop, every now and again, or you'd hear about it in Sunday school or something like that. It was they might as well have been written in Elvish, and stocked away in some cave in Middle Earth. But no, my exposure to them, just in terms of concept and name, was fairly early on, and I'm almost certain that it was a combination of my dad talking about who has taught Sunday school for decades, told me about this other arm of Judaism that existed during the Second Temple period in the first century, when Jesus was around. The Essenes, the Sadducees and the Pharisees were the ones that got top billing, but the Essenes were these strange fellows that don't get mentioned, except for in the margins and the periphery of whatever lesson might be put forward. And the other exposure, I'm almost certain, was under the late Dr. George Knight, who was a mentor of mine, and he was the the brother-in-law of our pastor, and would come over and do Bible studies. And he was an archaeologist too, and so a lot of his field experience helped to illustrate some pretty salient points in those studies. And I'm almost certain, as a youngster, I while picking his brain after these study sessions, I was probably the only 8 or 9 year old in a room full of men, in these January Bible studies that he would do, and he would graciously, answer all my questions. And I'm almost positive that part of my exposure was then, but it really wasn't until I got into college and I began to take Bible classes, theology classes, the history of biblical lands and the church, that I began to really sort of dive into the Dead Sea Scrolls proper. And I think really, as we talked about on our last show, the expedition to Banyas or Paneas, Caesarea Philippi, that sort of set me down on this road, really sort of opened that world of the Dead Sea Scrolls up to me, particularly the apocryphal material that had to do with Mount Hermon, and that in a nutshell was kind of my introduction to the Dead Sea Scrolls. But as I say, it wasn't until I was actually prepping to leave for that expedition to Banyas that I actually started reading, stuff like the Book of Enoch and the Genesis Apocryphon and Jubilees and some of the other stuff that's in the apocryphal cache of the Dead Sea Scrolls, that shed light directly on the significance in the Jewish mind as to why that region was important on a cosmic level.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that's so cool how how pivotal but mysterious this group really is. Can you explain the landscape of the time of Jesus? Who were the main Jewish sects that you mentioned? Pharisees, Sadducees, and Essenes. And why is it that we don't actually see the word Essenes anywhere in the Gospels when they were clearly a well-known group? They were influential in the community at the time. What's the story there in the Gospels? Why don't we see Essenes mentioned?
Well, of course, as listeners will probably be familiar with, the main three, and there certainly were other sects of Judaism.
Yeah.
But particularly during such a tumultuous time as the first century AD, some of those are combinations of religious and political movements like the Zealots. Mm-hmm. But the big three were the Sadducees, the Pharisees, and the Essenes, with the third one being the lesser of the three in terms of number.
Yeah.
But not influence, as I think you and I would agree on. But the Sadducees were really they were the temple bureaucracy. They were the overarching sort of theocratic court, if you will, consisting, of course, of priests. And the Pharisees were they're often referred to as the scribes and elders in the Gospels and the New Testament. And these were basically the lawyers and scholars of all of the, not just the Mosaic Law, but all the minutiae and commentary that went along with them. That's why they're the most haggling of Jesus's. Haggling is probably not the right word, but the most annoying of the crowds that Jesus draw, because they have all the little higgly-piggly questions for Jesus. And then you have the Essenes, who broke away as early as the 4th century, but probably into the 3rd century BC, excuse me. They had seen that the sort of corruption, it was a different kind of corruption in the Second Temple period, but this sort of my take on it is that they saw the legalism that was growing was basically bastardizing the state of Judaism that Yahweh had presented to the Jews, and they were like, "We're out of here. You know, we're not going to be doing this anymore." And so they leave to the desert regions on the borders of the Transjordan and set up these community.
At Origin, we know sport brings out people's passionate side, and this passion can do amazing things.
Monastic communities, in essence, in which they practiced a form of Judaism that they felt called to practice. It was an expectant. Just from reading the literature, it was a more expectant, messianic-driven, apocalyptic-driven sect of Judaism than the other two were, which is why I think that a number of them, I think demonstrably, even not only from written material that we find from Jewish authors, but also outside authors, prove that these the Essenic Jews actually became, at least in some of their numbers, became Christians eventually because of the theology and the ritual that they practice, and a lot of the phraseology that they share with figures in the New Testament like John the Baptist and Jesus.
Yeah, and that was something that was really fascinating in my research as well. Just seeing that, like, once you really kind of get a grasp of the basics of the Dead Sea Scrolls and then what this group taught, what they believed, who they were, you actually do see quite a bit in the New Testament about it. I mean, in Acts, for example, I've come to believe that when, and I could be wrong on this, but I've come to believe there's at least a possibility when Paul was on the road to Damascus that might not have been Syria, but might have been Qumran, because in the Dead Sea Scrolls they actually called their community Damascus in a couple different places, and it makes more sense why Paul would have to go to the temple to get letters of authority or permission to be able to go to Damascus to persecute followers of the way. If that's all the way in Syria, I don't know if they would need permission from the temple in Israel. So there's little things like that when you take them and kind of group them together, they all pile up and kind of form this new picture. So how did these groups form? So we have a period of about 400 years that's called the Silent Years between the Testaments. So we have the end of the Old Testament, everything makes sense, we kind of get the story, we know what's going on, and then you turn the page to the New Testament, and all of a sudden there's Pharisees and Sadducees. The whole structure in Israel is completely different. And on the surface, it doesn't seem like there's a whole lot of explanation for that. So what happened during what's called the 400 Silent Years that produced these three main groups, and how did the Dead Sea Scrolls actually come to be?
Well, there's certainly a lot of political upheaval in the region. Israel, once it's basically reconstituted, or I should say Judah, once it's reconstituted after Babylonian captivity, there are these spurts of sovereignty that the country will enjoy, but those are relatively short-lived because you eventually have outside powers vying for control over this stretch of land, which has been part of the history of ancient Israel, as you well know. But one of the big turning points certainly would have been the acquisition of this territory by Alexander and his Macedonian Empire. And we're talking mid to late 4th century BC when all of that gets constituted. And of course, in the wake of his death in 325, that all the territory that he controlled is sort of divvied up amongst his generals And the Ptolemies have the Levant initially, but the Seleucids will actually battle the Ptolemies at one point and gain control of the Levant. And so for the bulk of that period, you've got, like I say, you do have interregnums, if you will, of some Jewish control, but it's mainly a Hellenistic state at this point, and you have the basically the descendants of Seleucus in this point ruling over Israel, and of course there's another upheaval once the Hellenistic control wanes, and that's in 63.
Energy is an incredible, but in
3 BC, when Pompey, one of the triumvirate generals and a close friend of Julius Caesar, will basically take the Eastern Mediterranean and hand it over to Rome. And so at that point, it comes directly under Roman control. And the Romans, of course, cared less about how you worshipped, and because most people in the Mediterranean basin were pagans, without getting too far off base, but they valued law and order and their view of social stability above everything else, which caused them to clash in a lot of cases with the Jews. And so this is sort of the political backdrop of that inter biblical period, as it's sometimes called, those silent years, when a lot is actually taking place in terms of Jewish politics and Jewish theology. You have this is the period early on when you have the establishment of these sects of Judaism, Sadducees, the Pharisees, the Essenes, and the lesser ones that certainly existed. But the Sadducees and the Pharisees basically were the theological overlords of Judaism at the time, and it's, to the credit of the Essenes, I think they, like I say, they saw the corruptive influence of the temple bureaucracy and the staunch, almost unloving execution of Judaism as something that was foreign to what Yahweh had given to the Hebrews, and so they broke apart. Heard a call. I firmly believe they heard a call to do that.
Yeah.
So this sort of gives you some idea of politically what's happening in the backdrop during the interbiblical period. Like you say, if you're just reading the Bible through, and you hit the end of the Old Testament and you start into the New Testament, it's like, wait a second, did we miss did we miss a chapter or two in the book here? And without knowing something about the interbiblical period, that's what a through the Bible reading kind of feels like. But the fact of the matter is that there's a lot politically, historically, culturally, theologically that's significant that's going on during this period.
Yeah, definitely. And so the Dead Sea Scrolls themselves, are these like books from the main temple library that when these Jews or the sons of Zadok, they go by different names, but that when this group broke off, did they bring these books from the temple library with them, or did they just copy them down once they got there? How did the Dead Sea Scrolls themselves actually come to be, and why do you think that they were left there in Qumran?
Well, you bring up an interesting point. The Essenes are many scholars believe that they're sort of the intellectual, theological descendants of the Zadokite priests, who were the Bible students. The Bible will recall were very staunch, probably the staunchest opponents of the pagan influences against Israel at the in the both the more so the divided kingdom period. But there's definitely some connective tissue there. Now, in terms of the copies of material that they had with them, it's probably a mixed bag with the original stuff that they took from the temple. Probably some of it was original from the temple. Some of it's, I think about 35 or 40% of the Dead Sea Scroll material, that is, the material that's been found at Qumran, is Hebrew Bible material, and then you've got about 30% or so of apocryphal stuff like Enoch and the Genesis Apocryphon and Jubilees, and then the rest of it is essentially, it has to do. It's like the monastic order. It has to do with their rites and rituals and rules.
Tripadeal's famous 2-for-1 deals are back and on sale. Discover the wonders of the Med on an 18-day tour from only $8,500.
Rules and things like that. All of the asceticism and ritual bathing in the mikvah, and from the most sacred of rules down to the most earthly, mundane sorts of things. And so that's why I say that at least for that 35 or 40% of material that's Hebrew Bible, that's probably coming from the temple, it's probably a mixed bag. I mean, part of their function, after all, is scribal, and so they're definitely, we definitely get a sense that there were scriptura at Qumran, so they would have been copying a lot of this stuff.
These documents were discovered not too long ago, a few decades ago. So what happened? Why were these left? Because in my research, it seems like the main narrative is kind of, they say, well, there was a big persecution, so they fled and they left all their books behind. But I don't know, because it sort of seems like they became Christians and took the gospel out to the nations. They were following the orders of the Great Commission. So do you think that them leaving this treasure trove of books, was that done intentionally? Was it done kind of haphazardly because they were trying to get out really fast because of the coming persecution? Or did they have something in mind for that? Why do you think all of these books were left where they were?
Well, you could certainly argue the persecution arm, but you run into things in stuff like Enoch about this literature being written for a later generation.
Right.
How they were going, how they were going to get that material to whatever generation needed it. This was probably the best thing that the Essenes thought they could do, was to bottle it up and protect it as much as they possibly could. Because, as you say, I mean, there's good evidence that many of them did become Christians, and that this sort of aha moment for me was in during the course of my dissertation. I read a number of Epiphanius's material, and of course he was an early church father who lived in the 4th century AD, and he associates the reason that I ran into them is because a group of them apparently ended up in the sort of general Bonias, Caesarea Philippi region over the preceding centuries, and he names Bacchanatus or Botania, which is the Latinized version of that, as one of the regions that they ended up in, and he associates these two groups together in terms of their theology and sort of their theological trajectory. He mentions the Essenes, and their order and their practices. And he also mentions he describes them also as the Elkosites and the Nazorians. And I believe that these are two groups that did end up converting to Christianity.
We've helped travelers see the world for over a decade. This year, wherever adventure takes you, travel safe knowing that the travel insurance experts are going with you. Southern Cross Travel Insurance. Relax, we're with you.
Just because of again, the theological trajectory that they're taking and the way that Epiphanius is writing about it.
Yeah, it's fascinating looking into the history of that and seeing how it stretches across, into our church age today. You mentioned the Book of Enoch, and I wanted to ask you about the Book of Enoch because, of course, the Qumran community held it in high regards. How did they view the Book of Enoch during that, like the time of Jesus? How did they view that, or even the 2nd century BC around that time? And then how are we as Christians today meant to understand the Book of Enoch? Because I think a lot of people have some confusion about this. You get extremes on both sides. You get Christians that say you absolutely shouldn't even look at it or you'll burst into flames, because it's so evil. Then you get other Christians, that say, well, we need to put it in the Bible. It belongs in the Bible. It's the 67th book of the Bible. All this ridiculous stuff. So you get these extremes, and I think there's a lot of confusion about it. So how did the Qumran community view the Book of Enoch, and how are we as Christians today meant to understand it?
Well, again, sort of drilling down and back into the theology of the Qumran community, that the Essenes were they were an expectant group. They were clearly in my mind that it seems that they were clearly they did everything that they did, from leaving the temple infrastructure and going out into the desert. They did all of that because they wanted to focus on one expectation, and that was the arrival of the Messiah. You read their stuff, and it's apocalyptic. It's expecting the next chapter. In other words, it's expecting the end of this age and the beginning of the next one, and wrapped up in all of that, of course. Is the expectation that the Messiah is going to come back on the scene. And I tend to think that, particularly because the scholarship points to the 1st century AD kind of being the zenith of the Essene community. And if that's the case, that would certainly make sense when you start to look at the kind of stuff that John the Baptist is talking about, the phraseology that Jesus is also using. Just reading it from that, it looks like the Essene, at least some of the Essenes, recognize that, well, we don't have to wait anymore, because we've got this book that it has to be centuries, if not millennia, older than the actual writing down, because Enoch is the culmination of oral tradition, just like the entire Torah is the culmination of oral tradition. It existed in oral form long before it was ever written down. The Hebrews don't have a written language until the 10th or 9th century, the 11th or 10th century BC. And so in like manner, Enoch is kind of a culmination of all of that oral tradition. And clearly, because you get I guess to sort of use a Jungian phraseology, you get archetypes of not just the teacher or the Son of Man or the Messiah or whatever, but also the end of the age, and even the intimations of the Antichrist. can be found in a lot of that. And so, I think that because Jesus's ministry was so ambulatory, he would, there would be Essenes that would be hearing a lot of this and putting two and two together. And I think we've got our guy here. I don't think we have to wait much longer for this. And so, Enoch would have been, of central importance, I think, particularly in that zenith period of the 1st century AD.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. You mentioned that Enoch is apocalyptic, and it obviously is. Do you believe that the Book of Enoch has accurate prophecy? And if so, what does it say about our time or our future? Can we glean anything from the Book of Enoch pertaining to our time today?
Again, I'm not a date setter, but by the same token, where Jesus chides the Pharisees for being able to predict when it was going to rain, but they couldn't read the signs of the times around them. I think in like manner we can apply the Book of Enoch to our own time, and the fact that it says that it was made for a generation in the future. Even if it isn't our exact generation, it speaks more to us than it did at the time that it was written. Then it was just a forewarning. Now it's a handbook in a lot of ways, and I think without getting too science fiction about things, because there's such commentary, in Enoch on the pre-flood world and what's going on with the Watchers and the Nephilim. We're at the point now to where that sort of combination of practical sciences and occult knowledge that the Watchers taught humanity. We're at the point now to where we're starting to see a lot of things that blur the line between science and magic. And I think if there's any commentary, I mean, my gosh, the news about the chimera, the human monkey chimera came out, and we've been doing that probably for decades. It's just that we just get to see the surface news about that. And we're in the quantum age right now. We have super colliders that are, as we speak, probably creating artificial black holes. And even the people that work at places like CERN report very, very strange things, outside the realm of scientific quantification. Quantum computing in any other language would seem to be magic, because quantum computers dump their questions literally into other dimensions to derive the answers. So I think in a way, because of the manner in which this sort of new technology is unfolding, and perhaps even the purposes that it's being used for, I think that sort of points us back to what the Watchers were teaching humanity and why they were teaching it to them in the pre-flood world. That's one reason why I think Enoch is going to become more and more pertinent as we see more of this, being released to the public. Again, I'm not a date setter, and I'm certainly not a prophet, but again, it's hard to ignore the signs of the times. That the kinds of events that happen in the pre-flood world are starting to unfold now. And beyond that, the kind of lawlessness that was epiphenomenal of the activity of the Watchers and the Giants would seem to be pertinent as well.
Yeah, I agree. It's amazing to read through the Book of Enoch and see how relevant it actually is for our day today. And like you said, it's unique in the fact that it's more pertinent for today than it was when it was first written, which is absolutely amazing. And what's cool about it too is, we have the Ethiopic version of Enoch, and that's really extensive. We have a lot there. And then in the Dead Sea Scrolls, to me, we have enough fragments to where you can compare the two and see they are extremely, extremely close. So much so that if people say, well, the Ethiopic version could just be fabricated or made up, it's like, well, if that were true, they would have had to have known which parts of the Dead Sea Scroll version were going to degrade, which parts were going to be left,
Right.
and they would have had to fake around that. And I just don't see how that's even remotely possible. So in my opinion, based on these comparisons that we can look at, I think that the Ethiopic version isn't going to be a perfect translation, but I think it's really close. It's definitely close enough to where we can still get something from it. And so it's amazing that there is quite a bit in there about our day and what we're heading into. I'll tell you what, we're going to take a quick break, but before we do, Judd, where can people follow you online and get a hold of your materials?
Well, certainly they can look at birdandbeyond.com. The Institute of Biblical Anthropology website is tioba.org, and both of those are undergoing some much-needed renovation right now, so if people will bear with me. Facebook, YouTube. I do several programs, the Beyond Report, Quick Classics, which is sort of Greek and Roman and Jewish classics that people can get snippets of, and occasionally Antiquity X and Sunday School X, which are more visually driven. But those are the big places.
Excellent. Well, we have a lot more to talk about, but we're going to do that in the members only section right after this. Dr. Ken Johnson and I, if those of you out there are familiar with Dr. Ken Johnson, he's been a guest on before. We're going to have him back on again to talk about this calendar. But he has a website called dsscalendar.org, and it's basically an online version of the Dead Sea Scroll calendar, which is a great resource. It's for free. Anybody can use it, but it does also mean that you have to, it's not an app, it's a website. So you have to pull out your phone every time you want to look at it and scroll around and look for things. So I reached out to Ken and I said, hey, what would you think about us kind of like going into business together? But what would you say about producing a print calendar? Because I know how to do that. He already designed the calendar, so the artwork's done. I know how to get it into print and get it out to people. What do you say? And he was all for it. He was excited about it. So Ken and I worked together and produced the Ancient Dead Sea Scroll calendar in print form. And this is for this year. And it's absolutely